What's up, everybody? It's Man of Low Moral Fiber here. My name's Luke. We're back here in the Washburn Refinery with another weapon in the Does It Suck series, because this is another weapon that only comes in corrosive. This is the Stinkpot, which is one of the very few elemental Jacob weapons in the game, and it was actually the first one to be introduced. If you got it before you got the greed, that is. Now, this weapon actually drops from No Beard in the first campaign DLC, Captain Scarlet and her pirate's booty. We can see here that it consumes 2 ammo per shot. It has the Jakobs effect, where it fires pretty much as fast as you can pull the trigger, and what it shoots are actually little bouncing corrosive orbs, basically. And you can see here that they bounce a little bit. I'm unsure as to whether or not we'll be able to get critical hits with this weapon, so that will be one thing to note when we actually get into testing it here. I've never really used this weapon, so I can't recall if it gets critical hits or not. But we're going to spec into some skills here that I think will help it out, and then we'll go in to the Washburn Refinery and see if we're able to kill things at a decent rate or not. I will spec into Two Fang because it does have a low enough fire rate that Two Fang will help us out there, and so that should be nice. I'm also going to spec into these skills here from the Bloodshed tree for extra survivability and mobility. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and see if it kills things pretty quick here. I am wearing the Chaotic Neutral Rogue Comm for a boost to fire rate and magazine size. The fire rate won't help us too much, but obviously we're also getting that boost to Two Fang, which will help with fire rate. I say the fire rate won't help that much because obviously it's determined by how quickly I pull the trigger, basically. And it ripped through that first guy pretty quickly here. I didn't see it proc any critical hits, and I'm kind of guessing at this point that it doesn't get critical hits, but we'll see. Go ahead and get slag on this guy here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this weapon doesn't get critical hits. I'm probably missing some of those, but I would have expected one of them to at least show up as a critical hit by now. But, I could just be missing really badly, and we'll see. No, I don't think it gets critical hits. Wow, got a lot of loaders up in here, and these transfusion grenades aren't coming to me very quickly, but we're going to take these guys out. Definitely running into some trouble here. This gun lacks some stopping power. Obviously, because it can't get critical hits, and it's Jakobs' weapon, we're wasting one of the main advantages of using a Jakobs weapon, which is the increased critical hit modifier. And that's pretty lame, to be honest with you. You would like it to be able to get critical hits. I'm also noticing that it can't bore because it's not a bullet, it's more of just an orb. And so that's not very good either because, obviously we could get some more potency from it if it was actually able to get bore and critical hits. Now, this may not be the best character with this weapon, but obviously Zero will make any weapon perform pretty well. So we'll see. Got some exploders here. We'll just let them kind of deal with themselves. Wow, 3 exploders. That's a rarity in this room, especially back to back to back like that. If this was an exploder too, it would have been kind of funny. Glad it's not, though. Alright, so it seemed like I was shooting a lot into him there, but it wasn't dealing too much damage to him. Try to bounce the bullets into him a little bit. Maybe that'll work better. Now, even though this weapon uses 2 ammo per shot, it's never going to really run you out of ammo, I wouldn't imagine, because it does deal a decent amount of damage, and Assault Rifle has a very deep ammo pool. We're going to be moving on now and seeing if we're able to kill this badass up here. Now, this will be an interesting test, because I expect it to actually take a second to kill this guy, and so that should be rather interesting. Wow, he did not get slagged from my first slag transfusion grenade. That kind of sucked. Get kunai on him again here. Throw out one more slag transfusion grenade just in case, but he was running away from it, so it'll take a second to get to him. And, we were able to take him out in a decent amount of time. Now we'll go up here and we'll deal with some of these other loaders that are going to come up here in this next room in stages. And we'll see if we're able to keep up with the pace of the enemy spawns. I don't think he got slagged. Excellent. So, this weapon kind of confuses me a little bit. It seems like it's better to bounce weapons, or bounce the bullets into the enemies like that, as opposed to just shooting them straight up. And that's an effect I really don't like, especially from a Jakobs weapon. However, if I'm bouncing the bullets into him like that, it's killing him. Again, I think the fact that you can't get critical hits with a Jakobs weapon, this Jakobs weapon, is pretty stupid. That's not something I'd like to see from a Jakobs weapon at all, considering their main advantage, or one of the main advantages of using a Jakobs weapon, is that they have increased critical hit modifiers. And so that's pretty lame in my opinion. That is something that would definitely deter me from using this weapon. And even though we're using it here on corrosive vulnerable enemies, I'd imagine that if we were just using a Jakobs weapon that could get critical hits, we would be doing a lot better than we're actually doing right now. We are able to kill these things with it. It's definitely not incapable of getting kills, but at the same time, you know, there are a lot of weapons that would be killing them faster. So I don't know if this weapon necessarily sucks, but it's definitely not good by any means. It's definitely unique in the fact that I think it's the only corrosive Jakobs weapon, and so I guess that's kind of cool, but it's also the only Jakobs weapon I can think of offhand that can't get critical hits, and that is not cool. That is not something that is a reason to use this gun. That is a reason not to use this weapon. And okay, because the fact that you can't shoot an enemy straight in the chest with this weapon and get kills like that, it makes it a little bit difficult to use and a little bit counterintuitive trying to bounce these weapons up into these loaders, or bounce these projectiles up into these loaders. That is not something that I appreciate. And because of that, because I kill things pretty slowly with this gun, I've actually run out of grenades and let the spawns overwhelm me a little bit here, and that is not a good thing. That usually doesn't happen when I am doing these tests with corrosive weapons here in the Washburn Refinery. I usually am able to keep the spawns away from me like that, and so I really have to kind of downgrade the weapon for that aspect there. It's not a good weapon. The fact that it lacks that critical hit definitely deters me from using it very, very much. The fact that it doesn't shoot straight up like most Jakobs weapons should, in my mind, that deters me from using it too. Like here I'm shooting at the guy straight at him and I'm not doing as much damage as I would be if I was shooting the floor in front of him. And so I have to say that that's something I don't like about this weapon at all. This is an over-aggressive badass that does a lot of these stomps. But as you can see, when I shoot the floor in front of him and bounce it into him, it does a decent amount of damage. So I don't know. Kind of a mixed review on this weapon, I guess. If you're really into bouncing weapons off the floor into your enemy, maybe this is a weapon for you. It's definitely not a weapon for me, though, because I would prefer to actually just be able to shoot an enemy that I'm actually aiming at instead of aiming at the floor in front of him. And if I'm using a Jakobs weapon, I definitely want to get critical hits, which this weapon is incapable of. And so overall, I'd say the Stinkpot is a bad weapon. Not necessarily one of the worst weapons in the game by any means, because obviously it does have killing power at overpower level 8. But it is pretty bad. I wasn't a fan of it at all. So tell me what you think in the comments. I'll be sure to answer any of you guys' questions if I can. And if you haven't yet taken the time to subscribe, please do so. I'd really appreciate that. Otherwise, I do hope to catch you next time. Bye, guys.